Okay. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. I'm Kim Zeman, a member of the Board of Trustees. I want to offer a special welcome to those of you who are visiting for the first time. We hope that you join us for conversation in the gallery following the service. A few announcements for today. We are in need of volunteers on Sunday mornings. Please consider sharing your time and talent to run audiovisual, make coffee, greet visitors, or serve as an usher. Check in with the office if you have any questions. Next week, on Thursday, August 17th at 7 p.m., please join us for the annual Antelope Park concert. We will hear music and spoken word with Dr. Bob, Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair, and the A Street Band. The concert is free and open to the public. And finally, save the date for the all-church cleanup on Sunday, August 20th after service. We'll gather in the gallery to get our supplies and then divide and conquer. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. My name is Kathy Disney, and I'm a worship associate of this church. I am joined on the chancel this morning by longtime member Steve Innerson. Over the last few years, the ways that we have met has often changed, but whether in person, on Zoom, or a YouTube live stream, or some way of being that we cannot yet imagine, worshiping together is a chance to deepen our connection with the sources of meaning in our lives, and to proclaim who we are and what we are about, throwing open the doors of our congregation and proclaiming the radical love and welcome that is at the heart of our faith. The Unitarian Church of Lincoln aspires to be a loving community, uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and the world. We have a big vision here, and we know that creating a loving community begins with welcome. So whether this is your first time here or your 500th, whether you come here hopeful or heartbroken, whatever your age, gender, skin color, whomever you love, you are welcome here. As we enter into worship, take a moment to center yourself in this space. Find a comfortable place with your body. Take a few deep breaths. And let us begin our worship this morning by lighting our chalice. Our chalice words this morning are by Ralph Waldo Emerson. A person will worship something. Have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will out. That which dominates our imagination and our thoughts will determine our lives and our character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship. For what we are worshiping, we are becoming. And now please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing our first hymn, number 113 in the gray hymnal, Where is Our Holy Church? Hello, Mike.
Hello, Mike.
Yay. Our time for all ages this morning is going to be a short play written by Mr. Steve Innerson. And so if anybody wants to come up front, they can do that. But since there's no pictures and we're going to paint things with words, then you can stay where you are if you want. This play is called Wish. Hey, Mr. Phelps.
Hey, Max. Goodness, what are you doing out at this hour?
It's Friday night. I get to stay up later. I just came over to see what you're doing.
Well, I'm sitting, that's for sure. Sitting and thinking, and a little not thinking, and looking up at the sky. Want to look at the sky with me?
Okay.
Well, have a seat, my friend. Hey, a shooting star. Did you see it?
I think I did.
Did you make a wish?
No. Was I supposed to?
Well, that's the story. You see a shooting star and you make a wish.
For real? Will it come true?
I kind of doubt it. But it depends on what you wish for. If you wish for something easy, like pizza for dinner, then it might come true just naturally, but probably not because of the shooting star. And if you wish for something big, like a race car, then it almost certainly will not come true. Be pretty cool if it did, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, real cool. Except I wouldn't wish for a race car.
Why not?
I'm not old enough to drive. Oh. Might wish for a better bike, though. That'd be cool. What'd you wish for?
Oh, I didn't make a wish.
Why not?
Well, it's kind of a complicated answer. Do you want to sit and listen to a long, complicated answer?
No. Is there a short answer?
Well, I can say this. If I had made a wish, it might have been for some warm apple pie with ice cream. Yeah.
You know what I wish right now?
What?
I wish your wish would come true and that you give me some.
Well, Max, my man, my pie is your pie, except there is no pie. That shooting star must have been a dud.
Mr. Phelps,
Yes, Master Townsend.
I think I might like to hear your longer answer on wishes.
Well, okay, but I'll have to think for a minute. Try to sort out my thoughts because, they're complicated. All right. Part of the answer is I don't believe much in wishing for things
Why not?
because a lot of times just wishing for something is an excuse for not really doing anything to get it.
What do you mean?
Well, let's say I want some apple pie. I could just make a wish and hope it magically appears while I sit here and do nothing. Or I could do something that might actually result in a piece of pie.
Like what?
I could go into the kitchen and start making a pie. Or I could drive to the store and buy a pie. Or I could ask Margaret to make a pie. Or I could use my phone and order a pie to be delivered. You see, Max, if I have something I want, just wishing for it isn't going to do any good. But if I really want it, there are maybe things I could do that might make it happen. Does that make sense?
Sort of, I think.
Well, so let's say you want a better bike. You could make a wish in your head and then do nothing else. Do you think you would get it?
If I didn't tell anybody?
Yes, if you just kept it to yourself. Do you think you would get that better bike?
Probably no.
But could you actually do something that might wind up getting you a better bike?
Well, I could save money for it, except I don't have any money to save.
Well, what else could you do?
I could ask for a better bike,
Would that work?
maybe. If it's my birthday or Christmas.
Anything you can do without waiting for Christmas or your birthday.
I could ask my mom to bake an apple pie, and then I could sell it to you and use the money to buy a bike.
Ooh, wow. I'm guessing I'd have to pay a lot of money for that pie if you're going to buy a bike with it.
Well, yeah, but Mom's a good pie maker, I think.
Does she bake a lot of pies?
No.
Well, Max, I have to admire your entrepreneurial spirit.
What's entrepreneurial spirit?
It's complicated. Let's just say I like the way you think.
Really?
Yep. You think about stuff, Max. I like that. That's going to help a lot in life, as long as you keep it up.
How do I keep it up?
Well, just keep asking questions. Keep listening to people and ask questions about things you don't quite understand.
Like wishing?
Yeah, I guess, like wishing and other things.
So will you tell me the complicated part about why you don't like wishing?
Back to that, huh? What did I say so far?
That you don't like wishing for things because wishing won't make it happen.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's another kind of wishing that I do. What's funny?
You said doo-doo.
Oh, see, well, that's not the kind of doo-doo I meant. I just meant that there is a certain other kind of wish that I make once in a while, other than wishing for things.
What do you wish for then?
Well, I sometimes wish that someone does well at something. Like, my wish for you is that you keep using your good brain as you get older.
I have to. I got a lot of school to go.
Yeah, just being in school doesn't always mean you're using your brain in a good way. In fact, here's something you probably didn't know. That a lot of older boys, while they are turning into young men, just plain stop using their brains for a while.
Really?
Yep. That's why seniors in high school and young men in college do so many stupid things.
Really? What kind of stupid things?
Smoking, drugs, beer, picking fights, driving fast, all sorts of stupid stuff. And my wish for you is that you keep your brain working all while you are growing up and all your life long. That's a real trick, you know. Not a lot of people manage to do that. That's what's going to make you special, Max.
Well, hello, Max. I thought I heard a neighborly voice out here.
Hi, Mrs. Phelps.
What are you boys up to?
Mr. Phelps was telling me about complicated stuff.
And just what was Mr. Phelps telling you?
That he doesn't believe in wishes. Most wishes, anyway.
Is that right, Norman?
Well, yeah, more or less.
Don't let him pickle your brain, Max. Mr. Phelps has some weird ideas.
No, Margaret.
Now yourself, Norman. I don't have time to hear a rebuttal. I just came out to see if you two gentlemen would like a little dessert.
Yes, please.
What have you got, Margaret?
Well, I just got 2 pies out of the oven. How about some warm apple pie with ice cream?
And that is the end of our story. As we play our next piece of music, the children are welcome to go back to their classrooms.
The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. This is where we are called to be.
central part of our service is the time we join together as a community to mark the moments of our lives. We share with one another our joys, our sorrows, the events that mark the steps on our journey. The threads of sorrow and those of joy are intertwined in the fabric of our lives, present for all, remembered by all. We share those threads, and then they are woven together with those of others in our community. Our joys are shared and magnified. We are comforted in our sorrows. I invite you to type into the chat if you are online, or speak into this shared space your name or another you wish to be remembered in sorrow. And please remember that there is a lag between here in person and there online, so I may come back around to things that I don't get right in the moment. So please share in this space your name or another you wish to have remembered in sorrow or in concern. Dennis? Mom and Teresa. Kara. Sam. Duncan Case, now home from the hospital. Logan. David. A joy I will round back to. I hope. In the chat for sorrows, Evelyn Weymouth says, my cousin Betsy, who has been diagnosed with leukemia. Joy is also a part of this community, so I invite you to type into the chat or speak into the shared space your name or the name of others you wish to be remembered. And Joy, Joellen just said, so happy to see Sarah here and remembering when she was dedicated. Jody Bartlett is supposed to get her PhD this Saturday. Joy, sorrow, the last week of summer, the first day of school, starting next week for teachers and students. In the chat, Marilyn Harker says family visiting family over the summer. And Judy Kelly says extraordinary moving friends and helpers, Joellen Polzine, Linda Brown, Judy Hart, Lynn Howard, thanks to them. Heidi Jo Bartlett on the PhD. We know, too, that there are some joys, some sorrows that are yet unspoken, but deeply felt. Let us hold a moment of silence for everything that is still unspoken. Thank you for your presence. Our next hymn is not a hymn you will find in the hymn book. It is Imagine by John Lennon. Please remain seated and sing along, and I think you will be able to do it just fine. And if not, Julie will be here to help us through it. Thank you, Bill, for learning this piece to help us along.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
Each year at the spring congregational meeting, our members vote for 10 organizations for our Share the Plate program. The Share the Plate recipient for August 2023 is the American Civil Liberties Union of Nebraska. And I would like you to help me welcome Christine Morton, who will tell us more about their important work.
Thank you for the warm welcome. It's nice to see so many beautiful people here today. As Jean said, I'm Christine Morton. My pronouns are she, her. I serve as the Development Director at the ACLU of Nebraska. To tell you a little bit about the ACLU, which it was wonderful to walk up the steps this morning and see all of our posters in your window. So I know some of you know us well, and Jean shared with me too that we share a very important person in our histories, our shared histories of the Unitarian Church and the ACLU. Charles, and I have to look at his name, Charles Stephen, really brought the ACLU to Nebraska. So thinking and sending good thoughts to Charles today for bringing us together. The ACLU of Nebraska has been here for over 50 years, and we work in the courts, in the legislatures, and in communities to protect and advance the civil rights and civil liberties of all people. That's why we're here. I have just joined the American Civil Liberties Union. I've been there for a year and a half. I worked for another well-established nonprofit here in the city for 28 years and found myself to be in my late 50s and said, hey, if we're going to do something different, now it's time. So I'm still learning about the ACLU, and I have a lot to learn about the ACLU, but it's been a wonderful journey over the last 16, 18 months. And my job as development director is really to look at resources that are needed at the ACLU to continue our important work and join those with the people that care and want to have a role in that work. Before I forget, I want to tell you how to become involved with the ACLU, and then we'll move into the more important stuff, which is how we do the work and what it is that we do. Follow us on social media. That's how you get the up-to-date, when the legislature's in session, that's how you get the up-to-the-minute reports about what we're doing. Sign up online to get all of our information. As you know, the ACLU is active not only in Nebraska, but in all 50 states. So a lot of the things that happen nationally affect us here, and locally, what we do also affects the rest of us nationally. So we're all joined together. To dive into the work for just a little bit, and I could talk all morning, so Jean will probably give me a nudge if I'm going over time. But we have 5 focus areas, but one thing to remember is that our work at the ACLU is incredibly intersectional. So you really can't do one thing without it affecting the entire body of work. In no particular order, immigrants' rights, very important to us, LGBTQ rights. We work on racial justice. Racial justice is at the core of most everything that we do at the ACLU of Nebraska. Our growing body of work, you may see in the newspapers, is in indigenous justice, and we've become one of the most active ACLUs in the United States in working on indigenous justice issues. I'm losing track here. Criminal justice reform, so prisoners' rights issues, and then also, of course, reproductive freedom. I would love to talk, am I over time? Do I have, okay, I've got a little bit more time. Oh, good. So I'll give you just a little bit of a taste of what we are doing, and you may have seen us. We're in the news a lot, turns out, but a few things that we're up to these days. I've got a table out in the foyer, so please come join me. I've got some great giveaways, some mini constitutions. This is our newest report, Hair, Headdress, and Now. We were really, really excited this last legislative session because we were able to pass legislation that requires schools to have a uniform dress code policy across the state. So right now we're helping schools so that their dress code policies are inclusive, that they don't contribute to the school to prison pipeline. You may know that disparately, hair, headdress is a big part of that, and especially young Black women are targeted for their hairstyles, and that feeds that school to prison pipeline. Folks get involved with the juvenile justice system because of school issues, and then sometimes it just spirals from there. So we were really excited to see at least a little progress in that area. Another issue that we work on, as I said, was prisoners' rights and criminal justice reform. I'm sure you've all been following the $345 million prison that will be built, and that the money was allocated for last session. Sadly, we have a very big problem with debtors' prisons here in the state of Nebraska. In fact, we are one of the top, if not the top, most overpopulated prison systems in the United States. Upon building this new $345 million prison, it will already be over capacity. when it is built. We simply cannot build our way out of this problem. We need to work on reforms that keep people from becoming ensnared in our criminal justice process in the first place. So we're working on that. There's another report that I have that kind of talks about the rules. We did a really robust court watching project, and we have developed some strategies to help this crisis in our state. Jean is standing, so I'm going to wrap up. The other thing I'm sure that you're all aware right now is LB 574. We have litigation pending to stop the trans youth ban for health care, and then also that limits our reproductive freedom. It's two totally separate subjects. It constitutionally cannot be combined under one piece of legislation. So we've got plans. If the judge decides against us, we've got plans to go on from there. So I'll stop now. Please come see me. I have cards. Last thing, we are considering, Jean tells me that there's a lot of you that are very creative folks, and we would like to ask your help with an art project. Those beautiful posters that I mentioned, we've got a lot of them, and we've got a lot of historical ones archived. So we would like to be able to put together some sort of display that would allow us to bring it to places like the Unitarian Church and decorate our office, etc. Thank you. We need a stage hook. Okay.
That was great. That was perfect timing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today. And as a reminder to everyone else, we will give the ACLU Nebraska any loose cash and any checks with Share the Plate written in the memo line today. You might also consider text giving. Simply text UC Lincoln and the amount you wish to give to 73256. That's UC Lincoln and the amount to 73256. And as the music plays, will the ushers please come forward to receive our offering?
Let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears, while we all sup sorrow with the poor. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. While we seek mirth and beauty and music bright and gay, there are frail forms fainting at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis a sigh that is wafted across the troubled wave. 'Tis a wail that is heard upon the shore. 'Tis a dirge that is murmured around the lowly grave. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. Oh, hard times come again no more.
The reading this morning comes from the Federalist Papers, a collection of 85 articles and essays written in 1787 and 1788 to promote the ratification of the Constitution of the United States. Collectively, they were written by Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. These particular words come from paper number 14, written by James Madison. Why is the experiment of an extended republic to be rejected merely because it may comprise what is new? Is not the glory of the people of America that whilst they have paid a decent regard to the opinions of former times and other nations, they have not suffered a blind veneration for antiquity, for customs, or for names to overrule the suggestions of their own good sense, the knowledge of their own situation, and the lessons of their own experience?
Well, my first line is inoperable now. If you can remember the opening of 2001, Thus Sprach Zarathustra, it's a pretty stirring, short piece of music. And I was going to say that I thought that music sort of oversold this sermon a little bit. So your expectations are probably already adjusted down, so here we go. But that music, I sure wish we had it, does evoke images of a new era dawning. And I chose it because I think our American democracy is on the cusp of a whole new era. Sounds alarmist. I am not a political scientist. I am not a political activist. I am not at all knowledgeable in the machinations of the political scene. I am just a 78-year-old guy who has been observing the national goings-on for more than half a century, and who now has some serious wonderments and fears about our whole system of government. Actually, I strongly suspect that sometime before my 90th birthday, our country will subdivide in some way, perhaps peaceably, perhaps not. Or it will come under some new form of government, perhaps dictatorial, perhaps democratic, but different from the current system. Sounds alarmist, but think. Think about the mounting hatred between factions among the populace. Not just disagreement or even dislike, but actual passions of hatred. Think about the prevailing and increasing attitude among many factions that anything a particular group favors or opposes is fair game for the passage of a law. If you've got the votes, it's okay to make a law. Think about how a well-organized minority can exercise far greater political power in our system than the unorganized majority, and can essentially cram its values down the majority's throat. Think how damaging that power disparity has been to people of color and the underprivileged and underpowered, and to our domestic safety and to our planet. Think about the increasing political power of the moneyed interests and special interest groups. Think about the growing disparity between the haves and the have-nots, enabled and exacerbated by legislation favorable to the moneyed interests. Think about the paralyzing enmity between the parties in Congress, enmity that inhibits compromise, can prevent lawful judicial appointments, obstructs the passage of much-needed legislation, and repeatedly brings the country to the brink of bankruptcy. Think about how we allow all manner of disaffected people to walk freely among us, toting assault weapons and semi-automatic handguns, wreaking havoc, spreading fear, and taking innocent lives in large numbers. An interesting thing about our American democracy is how we present it to the world as the true beacon of freedom and a paragon of the democratic ideal. It may not be perfect, we readily acknowledge, but we quickly claim it's the best there is. And we have been using that phrase, it's the best there is, since almost forever, as an excuse for not really trying to correct the flaws that keep it from being more perfect. Oh, we amend the Constitution every now and then to add a particular freedom or restriction here or there. But our standard remedy for the dysfunction in Congress has long been nothing more than pleas for more citizen involvement, greater voter turnout, more people contacting their representatives. That remedy hasn't worked so far. And to me, it sounds like little more than wishing on a shooting star. What we really need, I believe, is a good, hard look at the systemic flaws contained within the Constitution itself. You can get copies of it at Kristen's booth. Before looking at what those flaws might be, however, it would be helpful to get some clarity about what we think democracy really is or should be. The definition of democracy I most admire comes at the end of the Gettysburg Address: a government of the people, by the people, for the people. So let's ask, how close does our form of government come to meeting that ideal? Of the people. Just about any system of government is a government of people. The good thing about our American system is now that, in theory at least, the laws of our government apply equally to all people. There is not officially a privileged class. So we can say our system meets this first requirement. By the people. The laws that govern all the people in our country are not made by all the people. They are made by a select few, the 535 members of Congress. Some will argue, of course, that ours still qualifies as a government by the people, since the representatives are elected to office by the people and can be voted out of office by the people. But let's consider a couple of points here. First is that our elected representatives represent the interests of their constituents in theory, but not always in practice. Repeated polls have shown that our senators and congresspeople very often don't vote in line with the interests of the majority of their constituents. Second, the lengthy time delay for voting a bad representative out of office greatly diminishes the effectiveness of the voting process in keeping elected representatives in line with the majority. Absent the very difficult and rarely used process for actually recalling an elected official, we can't readily vote congresspeople and senators out of office. We can mainly just keep them from being reelected or hope they die. So, ours is not fully a government by the people, for the people. This third characteristic implies that the legislative arm of government will be making laws that are in the general interest of the population as a whole, as opposed to making laws that satisfy some minority segment. And it is here that our current system strays farthest from the ideal of democracy, because it enables legislative action and inaction that often subverts the will of the people. Think gun control. Think women's rights, abortion and otherwise. Think campaign finance reform. Think climate change. Do we really think our current laws on these issues reflect the opinions and wishes of the majority? Recent polls show they do not. And to illustrate, with just one very specific, very absurd, very egregious example, think of the law passed in 2003 that for the last 20 years has prohibited Medicare from negotiating lower prices on prescription drugs. What a subversion of majority will this was. Is there any way such a law could legitimately be called democracy at work? Would any of us in this room ever have voted for a law that would prohibit Medicare from seeking lower prices from Big Pharma? I submit our American system very often fails to meet the third requirement of a true democracy. To state it accurately, I think what we presently have is a government of the people by an elected few who have a wide latitude to follow their own agendas for the powerful special interest groups. So now, here is my big wonderment. Why, when our system falls so short of the ideal of democracy, why do we not challenge the system more? Why do we continue to venerate the out-of-date intentions of the founders? Yes, the founders established a brilliant, radical, new political system that dealt with the challenges of the late 18th century. But is that system still adequate for today's vastly different world? Why, in this 21st century, are we content to complain about the failures of our government, but loath to attempt or even discuss truly meaningful systemic reform? Is it because we think the problems of our current system are not that serious? Really? Or is it that we hope the current system will fix itself? Wishing on a shooting star? Or could it be because we have been indoctrinated from preschool onward that the American Constitution is sacrosanct and it is unpatriotic, practically treasonous, to question its validity and continued relevance to our lives? I think it's this last one. We have not, as a culture, given ourselves permission to question the continued relevance of our sacred Constitution as it now stands. So, what am I suggesting that needs fixing? I'm suggesting, well, the two most obvious flaws in the Constitution, of course, are the horribly vague, anti-human Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, and the anti-democratic Electoral College. But these two obvious flaws are not my big worry right now. My big concern is two more subtle, but ultimately more damaging flaws that are rarely talked about. The first is that the Constitution blindly leaves the workings of Congress up to Congress. The Constitution establishes the two houses of Congress, but says nothing about how they can or should operate. That omission leaves the houses to establish their own rules of operation and procedure and seniority and committee assignments and really every aspect of their doings, including a lot of shenanigans that go on behind closed doors. This business of putting the foxes in charge of the chicken coop has allowed several anti-democratic conditions to evolve. Among them, the micromanagement of government functions with lengthy laws that can run over 1,000 pages of confusing, difficult to sparse text, with big and little bits of favoritism tucked in here, there, and maybe everywhere. The use of non-germane writers to important pieces of legislation, which allows unpopular, minority-focused proposals to get passed into law on the coattails of popular, important bills. The prohibition against negotiating with Big Pharma is a strong case in point. And perhaps most damaging, the evolution of a de facto two-party system, which freezes out all other parties and gives a significant advantage to the major party. Bipartisanship, which was once the cornerstone of good and reasonable legislation in the two-party system, is now nearly extinct. The primary value in Congress has become party loyalty, not loyalty to country. Each party's primary goal is the capture and retention of power over the other party. There is little incentive to compromise. And the various things that each party does to try to gain and keep advantage over the other are often contrary to the national interest. Think gerrymandering on the state level. That shameful, undemocratic practice employed by shameless party loyalists would be much more difficult, if not impossible, in a multi-party system. Those are just a few of the salient effects of no guidance and no accountability for Congress. Political scientists could tell you a lot more, I'm sure. The second big flaw in the Constitution, in my opinion, is that the Constitution specifies a popular vote for the selection of senators and congresspeople. I know. Claiming that the popular election of representatives is a flaw is heresy. But consider, because representatives need to be elected, they campaign for office. Because campaigns for national office are typically very expensive, candidates need large amounts of money to campaign effectively. This leaves winning candidates, even the ones we hold in high regard for integrity and patriotism, this leaves them all beholden in some measure to the moneyed interests that help get them elected. Further, those winning candidates, once elected, want to get re-elected, which means they are constantly seeking continued funding from major contributors. Such dependence on present and future extraordinary contributions buys the major donors extraordinary access to the representatives they support. access that can and does affect the way representatives vote. That, quite simply, is a recipe for the manipulation, abuse, and subversion of democracy that we have been experiencing. But is there a good alternative to elected representatives? Appointed representatives? No. That would just leave the representatives beholden to the persons who appoint them. So representatives who are randomly selected, like a jury pool maybe. I don't know. Or maybe no representative democracy. Maybe a true democracy where all laws are voted on by the entire electorate. Elements of such a system, also called direct democracy, are already employed to a limited extent in California in the form of their various propositions, and in Switzerland and elsewhere, but no nation that I know of employs it to any great extent. As a side note, I was surprised to learn from my reading in the Federalist Papers that the founders actually considered direct democracy as an option. They rejected it because they thought the country was too vast for it to be feasible. At that time, humans and news traveled at the same speed, taking days or weeks to get from one end of the country to the other. Today, human travel takes mere hours, news travel is instantaneous, and remote meetings can be conducted in real time. The vastness of the country is not the factor that it once was. Good direct democracy work in today's world? I don't know. I am just a guy who thinks we should not dismiss radical new concepts out of hand without having a great many smarter, more knowledgeable people looking deeply into them. We need smart, courageous thinkers like we had 235 years ago. Now, for just the second time in our nation's history, we have to get radical. We need to start exploring versions of democracy that could correct the obvious and the more subtle flaws of our current imperfect system. I can't tell you what those radical versions would or should look like. I don't know enough to design a good new system. But I do know enough to be afraid of our trajectory. Afraid that if we don't come up with a more fair, more just, more equitable system soon, our ship of state will not be able to steer away from those looming icebergs. However, before we can go looking into radical new concepts, we need to do something else first. And this is the main point of my remarks. We need to give ourselves permission to go looking. We need to take our current Constitution off the hermetically sealed pedestal we have kept it on. We need to make it acceptable for each other and our culture to begin discussing the need for radical new concepts to help our democracy operate more democratically. Once we have made it acceptable to even entertain such concepts, then we need a serious, wide-ranging constitutional convention populated with brilliant, selfless thinkers, if we can find them. Philosophers and political scientists and pundits and think tanks and politicians and neighbors. Courageous people who will accept the challenge to begin imagining a better form of democracy. Imagine. We can do it if we try. We can and should leave our esteemed founders on their pedestals where they rightly belong. We just need to stop our mindless veneration of them and their creation. We need to acknowledge to ourselves and each other that we need a new version of American democracy, one that cannot be so easily subverted, one that will help us achieve, in today's world, a more perfect union. Such is my wish for us all. And now, please join in singing hymn number 121 in the Gray Hymnal, We'll Build a Land.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a land where peace is born. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll be a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come, build a land, the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand her people. Oh, come, build the land, my people we seek. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
Our closing words are a repeat of James Madison. Is it not the glory of the people of America that whilst they have paid a decent regard to the opinions of former times and other nations, they have not suffered a blind veneration for antiquity, for custom, or for names. to overrule the suggestions of their own good sense, the knowledge of their own situation, and the lessons of their own experience.
Morally, I was led to nonviolence because I felt that it was the best moral way to deal with the problem. We were seeking to establish a just society. And it was my feeling then, and it is my feeling now, that violence is certainly much more socially destructive, and it creates many more social problems than it solves. So I was led to nonviolence for deep moral reasons. And I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.
There is no freedom, the wise man said, let justice roll down when the poor cry out for shelter and bread. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary? Walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Hatred will never drive out hate. Let love roll down, roll down. Remember, our hearts can make us great. Let love roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. And let your love roll down like a mighty stream. When brutality threatens our daughters and sons, let peace roll down, roll down. May our voices rise up louder than the guns. Let peace roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. And let peace roll down like a mighty stream. Step by step, one by one, let justice roll down, roll down. They can kill the prophet, but the dream lives on. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream. Oh, children, don't you get weary. Walk together, believe in the dream. When the way gets rough, we'll make a new way. Let justice roll down like a mighty stream.
I turned to it because I felt that it was the morally excellent way to deal with the problem of racial injustice in our country.